You're listening to Catholic Family Podcast.
I'm Kevin Davis, and this is another podcast episode of the Catholic Family Podcast. I'm a little bit rusty. It's been a long time since I've done one of these podcasts, so bear with me, bear with us. Hopefully this is going to be an instructive, informative, and enjoyable podcast. I'm happy to be joined by Father Geckle and my brother Dominic, who joins the ranks of my family members to join the Catholic Family Podcast. So I'm happy to have both of them. Father joining me from Arkansas. Thanks for being here, Father.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Dominic, you as well from out there in the farm country of Iowa.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
And Dominic, so if anyone gets a little confused, Dominic and I sound pretty similar sometimes. So it may be, people may hate this podcast just for that fact that they don't really know who's talking.
It can get kind of funny. Yeah,
it can. We tried that even with my wife years ago. We're like, okay, she turned around and like, okay, who's talking? And I think she was about 50% right and wrong. so pretty similar. And today's topic is talking about liturgical music. And the reason why I have these two on is because they're two of the more prominent choir directors, I suppose you could say, in the CMRI group, and two of my favorite choir directors that I've been able to sing with and learn from. I have to say, first of all, they actually learned from me. I was the first choir director, so whatever good things these guys have, they definitely learned it from me. That's for sure. No, actually, in truth, there's a reason. There was a reason why they had to take over, because I was a terrible choir director. A choir organizer, okay, but I'm a very bad conductor. That's for sure. But today it's actually a very serious topic that I think that perhaps it is a little taken a little for granted these days, or people don't quite understand the importance of it, because it is actually part of the liturgy or aids in the liturgy of the Mass. And it's something that several popes have written on very seriously. Pope Pius X has a really beautiful encyclical, I believe, called Trale. Oh boy, now I lost it. It's up on my tab. Sorry, guys. Trale Sollecitudini. Introduction on Sacred Music from Pope Pius X. It's very nice. Pope Pius XII also has one called Musicae Sacrae, which is also very nice and kind of repeats a lot of what Pius X said with a few small changes. And to get started with this, I'm just going to read through the general things he did coming into his office as Pope. So this is quoting from Pope Pius X. Sacred music, being a complementary part of the solemn liturgy, participates in the general scope of the liturgy, which is the glory of God and the sanctification and edification of the faithful. It contributes to the decorum and the splendor of the ecclesiastical ceremonies. And since its principal office is to clothe with suitable melody the liturgical text proposed for the understanding of the faithful, its proper aim is to add greater efficacy to the text, in order that through it the faithful may be the more easily moved to devotion and better disposed for the reception of the fruits of grace belonging to the celebration of the most holy mysteries. Second point, sacred music should consequently possess in the highest degree the qualities proper to the liturgy, and in particular sanctity and goodness of form, which will spontaneously produce the final quality of universality. It must be holy and must, therefore, exclude all profanity, not only in itself, but in the manner in which it is presented by those who execute it. It must be true art, for otherwise it will be impossible for it to exercise in the minds of those who listen to it that efficacy which the Church aims at obtaining in admitting into her liturgy the art of musical sounds. But it must at the same time be universal in the sense that while every nation is permitted to admit into its ecclesiastical compositions those special forms which may be said to constitute its native music, still these forms must be subordinated in such a manner to the general characteristics of sacred music that nobody of any nation may receive an impression other than good on hearing them. So that's kind of, again, the introduction into this encyclical, which you can find fairly easily online, and I think it's very worth reading for anyone who is in choir, and especially for choir directors. And I think that, Father, I would love to just get your impressions on that and your impressions on the importance of choir as a priest.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's hard to add to the eloquence of Pope Pius X and Pope Pius XII on the subject, obviously, but just as you said, personally, you know, as a priest, I guess you don't always recognize when you have a really good choir singing behind you, because a lot of times I'm just really, really focused on the Mass and the prayers and making sure you don't mess anything up. Obviously, that's the priest's primary job there. But we definitely do notice when there's a choir that's off. And I think that's a really big point to make for the priests and for the faithful, that choirs need to understand that, you know, it's supposed to be an aid to the Mass, not a hindrance, not something to take away from the Mass. And if it's a distraction, or if it's something that is taking away from the solemnity and the holiness of the Mass, then it shouldn't be there. You know, so as a priest myself, I mean, I love music. When I'm actually having Mass, a lot of times I don't notice it a whole lot if it's good. And I kind of feel that's the way it should be as a priest. Obviously, there's times when you have a high Mass, there's a Gloria or a Credo where you can actually sit there and listen, and you know that's different. But when you're actually having the Mass, there's been a lot of times where there's been choirs that take away from it, and you know, that's not the intent. That's not the purpose of choir, and it's not the purpose of music in Mass and any liturgical functions. It's meant to help and be an aid to devotion and assisting at Mass, and it's not just supposed to be something where people get in the back and they get to show off their voices and how they can sing. And I know, you know, that's not why people go up there. That's not the point of it. But it's for God and for the worship of God, and not as a attraction or a spotlight on man and man's abilities and accomplishments. And I think that's a really, really important point to make with regard to church music.
That's really well said, Father. And I think that really brings to my mind too, when they say the idea of, I mean, Father Benedict said when on another podcast, the dignity of the Mass, and that's so much part of that. And we have to remember too, our littleness, especially as the people, we are very little in terms of how we are partaking in the Mass. And that's the same with the choir individually. We are a very, very, very small part of it, and we are part of it, and we should be part of it. But our parts should not play detriment to the greater part, as you say, and that's definitely well said. Dominic, I think we lost you for a bit, but we're talking about the dignity of the Mass and how important it is for the choir to at least be good enough not to distract or to take away from the liturgy. And Dominic, you've been in choir for many years and a choir director. I mean, what's your experience in terms of being a choir director and making sure that the choir sounds good enough?
That is a very good question. So I would have to say that it's having been part of a lot of choirs that were the distracting choirs, and then also being part of the choirs that were the really good, like uplifting, amazing choirs, that there's a immediate feel as a director as to I guess you feel awful when you know you're a distraction to the people, and it's oh boy. Is that something you think you can do? Can you change that during? I mean, because it's something you can't really change when it's off the rails during the song or something, right? So it's more of something that has to come from preparation. And I think the hardest thing for me and for anyone as a choir director is to be able to say, hey, I'm sorry, but you probably can't sing in the choir. Yeah. And that's really hard to do if you are not the longtime choir director of a certain choir. So I've had the ability and to step in for a lot of like weddings and a lot of big events, and a lot of those you end up with a lot of riff-raff that you're not used to, or you don't know if they're any good, or you're working with a very, very open kind of clean slate, and you don't know what you're stepping into. So it's an art
as a choir director to be able to be, all right, you have maybe one practice before this event, you're picking out voices and you're being like, oh, all right, this certain person might need a stink eye during the first song. And I've done that a couple of times, not a whole lot over the years, but I've done that a few times where you start the first song and you look someone dead in the eye, point at them, and just you do the stop singing motion with your hand, and feel a little bit bad about it for about 30 seconds, but then the whole rest of the choir is better for it. I think that is like one of the hardest things to do as a director, though, is kind of taking a single person's feelings and kind of mush them down for the greater good.
Well, it's a difficult thing because, the reason people are up there is they want to sing. They want to sing for God. They want to be able to contribute, to the Mass. And I think that's where we have to have the understanding that there is that, as you said, the higher good. And, none of us should be too prideful to admit that, if we're not up to par or up to standard, that we should be there anyway. That takes humility, of course, but right. It also takes, an open mind and a desire to honor God above all things. So, it can be taken too far, as in all things. There's extremes where somebody makes a mistake and then they get, hounded. But I think that's, the situation you're talking about, Dominic. I know exactly what you're talking about. I think we all do. Yeah. But I think those are two separate conversations, because you have the one conversation about, thrown into that situation where you don't have that control. But then there's what the better thing to kind of focus on is okay, what's the norm? What's the expectation for our choirs in our parishes? Because, the weddings and other things like that's something that happens on occasion, but parishes, choirs, churches, that's something that has to be developed and built. And part of that is, like you said, not allowing the people that, aren't quite up to par, not allowing them to sing yet, but, working with them. But anyway, I just think it's definitely a different conversation.
And so, Father, Father, is that something is that your first responsibility as the priest? Does the priest need to be the one who overall says, okay, the quality is good enough or it is not, and then you are the one who picks, say, a choir director who you trust to be in that position, or how should that work? Ideally, it's the priest's job to ensure that the sacred liturgy is performed in a way that's befitting, that's proper. But not every priest, has a musical ear. So sometimes they have to, trust somebody that does have that. So it depends. But ideally, the priest should be, making the calls on that. It's his job. It's his place, as the pastor, as the priest. So yeah, certainly, ideally. And then ideally too, right? So after the priest makes that call and then puts someone in place to be the choir director also has to make tough decisions and say, as Dominic very eloquently put it, to weed out the riff-raff, right? And it's really, but we want this podcast to be two sides. We want it to be for the choir director and we want it to be for the singers. And so that's something I think that's extremely important. And it's really the root of the entire thing, is that the choir director obviously has more responsibility on their backs, and they have to be the ones who bear that brunt, and to be the ones who are maybe not so nice or not nice, but are the ones who have to hurt feelings sometimes. But the people who sing, they have the responsibility to know that their contribution could negatively affect the liturgy. And that's really incredible. And I think that if every person who listens to this, who's in the choir, I think they should all, including me, for goodness sake. I mean, I know for absolute fact, I've listened to recordings of a choir that I've been in, and I can tell you sometimes it's like, oh, please, I honestly, there were times I honestly almost quit choir. I'm not even kidding. I mean, there are times like I was so bad and I was so off, and it's like, it's unbelievable. And I think that people really do need to look at it like, okay, maybe they need to go to their choir director and honestly say, hey, am I good enough to sing in the choir?
Yeah. I think it's a great point. I mean, and I think it has to be an understanding for everyone in the church, priests, parishioners, choir directors, singers, to understand that there is something that has to be constantly worked on, and always there's room for improvement. And sometimes the people that are in it, that are singing or being the director, they're not really understanding. Maybe not being critical of themselves or being overly critical. Again, there's always extremes, but the two of you remember the first recording that we did together,
sure.
In Omaha. We for those that are listening, we had this men's choir. There are probably 4 or 5 of us, maybe 6, and we got really into it, and we singing all the time. And we thought, we're pretty good. This is awesome. Look at how far we've come. And we're doing harmonies with just 4 people. And, we did that recording in Omaha in the high school boys classroom, and we thought it was fantastic. It was awesome. Dominic and I were the newest members, so we had to share bass. Remember that? And we were kind of mad at each other all the time because we thought each of us was better than the other.
Oh yeah.
and when we heard those recordings, I remember thinking, man, we're awesome. We're so good. This is fantastic. Oh, I love listening to this part of that song. And then a year later, I couldn't listen to it. It was so bad. I mean, it's horrible. I hope no one has those CDs still in their possession because it was awful.
Oh, Father, I've got another funny story with that I brought it home from Omaha. I brought it home from Omaha and played it, I don't know, probably several times because I was so proud of it, and in the family CD player. And at some point, my mom came to me and said, Kevin, can you just please play something else? She didn't say it was bad, but it was like, it was like, okay, Mom, yeah, all right,
yeah,
I'll play something.
Well, and that's human nature. I mean, when we put work, time, and effort into something, obviously we're gonna, be proud of it. And that's where that critical element comes in of needing to be critical of what we do, and understanding of what the goal is. It's not just to lift up ourselves, but to glorify God. And I think that's actually was a great byproduct of us wanting to do all of those recordings, and something if choirs are able to do this, I kind of recommend it. I don't know if you guys think this, but one thing that doing those recordings did is it actually brought out to us, okay, we have to work on this or we have to work on that. And I think
absolutely
that's a very beneficial thing.
I know the Denver choir has done that for a good while, where they record big feasts and then they'll go back and listen to it. It's like, that was a little rough, or we need to work on this. I think that I would absolutely agree that recording your music, even recording practices, like if you're a small choir and you're going to be doing practice for Christmas or Easter, record your practice, and then as a choir director, go back, listen to it with a critical ear and be like, all right, well, this is what we need to help and this is what we need to fix. And then you take that into the next Sunday, or you take that into the next practice and implement it that way. And I think that's a great tool for directors.
Well, and I think it goes both ways. It's on one hand, it allows you to be critical and to pick out mistakes and faults and areas to improve. But it's actually really encouraging too, especially when you're first listening to it. It's like, oh, that sounds really good, or oh, we pulled this really difficult piece off. That's huge. So it does get you a little excited and makes you want to do it more. But it also gives an element after you listen to it a couple times, you start, I think, more to pick out, okay, there's issues here. It's not perfect, and we need to build on this.
Yeah.
You definitely need both. You need to not just want to be discouraged and give up. You need to be critical, but also at the same time motivated and enthused about it.
That's exactly right, Father. And I think, as you say, be don't give up on it. I mean, and don't think, okay, I'm just not good enough. That's definitely not the point we're trying to make. I mean, many people who don't sing are just scared to sing, even though they would have brilliant voices and help the choir because they don't have the confidence. So confidence is also a huge part of it. So that's not at all what we're trying to say, but having the humility or whatever it is to be able to say, okay, am I good at, should I be here or should I not? And then once you do that, and even if you're not now, most people, I truly believe probably 95% or so of people can sing. And maybe some just need more work than others. I mean, I did too. I needed years of Father Highness singing in my ear for me to even be able to sing at all. That's totally good. And now I can sing decently, but it took a long time. It was not like boom, like some of my siblings who can just immediately sing. I mean, that's just how it is, and that's okay. You have to work on it. But for any.
Sorry, just to add on to that, there's a great story that a guy in the Omaha parish, in high school, tone deaf, like just couldn't sing. Father Philip took him under his wing, did every, I think, two days a week, did like an hour practice, just do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do for like 2 years, a long stinking time. And then, gee whiz, probably 3 or 4 years after having him like going over and over and over and over this stuff, he was the lead tenor in the Omaha parish for a good while. That's really encouraging for people that are like, oh, I don't have a good voice, or maybe I have a good voice, but I just don't have the confidence. We had this kid that was like super, super willing and wanting to try to become a good choir member. And it took him a while, but then he was a legitimate addition to the choir in Omaha.
That's awesome. And that's what we should, I mean, that's what we all should want. And we should be the workers and the ones who want to progress things through work, not just through just assuming we have the talent. A lot of this stuff just does take, maybe years, as you say. I mean, maybe it does take years, but I think we can all say too, the joy, the really deep joy you can get from being a part of a magnificent choir and part of that choir that's part of a magnificent liturgy. I mean, I know our experience for Father Geckle's ordination is truly one I'll never forget. And we listen to that CD every Sunday on the way to church, an hour to church every Sunday, and it never gets old. And it's something that it's always there. I mean, we always have that. I was always part of that, and it's spiritual too. And I mean, it's just so incredible to be part of that. And I think that's something that people who don't sing, I hope you give it a chance. Maybe go to your choir director and say, hey, can I try out, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it would be a good point. And this is something that I'm learning myself. We all have different roles. And for myself, I've learned that I'm a horrible teacher when it comes to music. I mean, I don't understand music theory and concept that much. I mean, what I know is just from experience, from the amount of singing that we did together, what we were taught in high school, etc. But my technical knowledge of music is very lacking. My idea of how to teach music is very poor. But I love to sing and I love to direct. And I think if you can have people that are willing, like Father Philip was, to take the time to work with people, that's huge. Help. It should be. We would hope that it's something that you can get multiple people to try to help out with. If you have some people that are better at teaching or working with the simple things and taking the time out to do that, or you have people that are more organizing music or people that are finding new music, then you have the people that are maybe all they can do is direct, and they're really good at directing. I think there's sometimes can be that issue with the role of I'm the choir director and I'm the leader and everything I say goes and everything that I don't want doesn't go. And there isn't kind of a sense of, okay, we've got a goal here we're working towards. And if I can't fill this role really well, then let me get somebody else to help fill that role. And again, this is for the greater glory of God. It's for uplifting those who are attending the liturgical services. And if we all need to have that humility and recognition that we're not perfect, we're not good at everything, and if we aren't able to fill the role, or we're not able to grow a choir or work with the choir, then let's try to find somebody that can, try to fill that position.
Yeah, that's so true, Father. And I think that, as you say, all these roles, and how important is it to teach children, right? Teach children how to sing. And
right.
Yeah, I mean, I think Denver, at least before, had a really beautiful children's choir that I'm sure those kids have moved on to join. I hope at least they've moved on to join the main choir. And that's and I tell you, if you have a well-trained or even a decently trained children's choir, it is also one of the most inspiring things I've witnessed.
It is. Yeah.
Well, I'm very excited because I believe the lady that trained and worked with that children's choir just moved to my parish here in Mountain View. So
she did. We're all so sad about that over in Denver.
I'm very excited because that means I might actually I will have a choir in one of my parishes, which is something I haven't had. So, I'm rubbish at teaching music. I'm more rubbish at teaching music to children. It's just something I don't have experience with. So I'm really excited about that for myself. So little excitement here for me.
Well, so that's a really good question then, Father. I mean, and you're a perfect example. So how are you going to build that choir? Are you going to just say, okay, here's this lady coming in, or are you just going to give it to her and let her run with it? Or how are you going to do that?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. When you reading in the what the church says about music, it just gives you that understanding of what it should be. And a lot of choirs, it's kind of just they do the best they can, and a lot of times that isn't that shouldn't be the role model of just doing the best you can. We should be striving, to follow the mind of the church with regard to music and how the church says, okay, this is the best way to do things. That's what we should really strive for. So what I'm hoping we can work with here is, I'm going to try to have an active role in guiding the choir director to, really work on Gregorian chant. And, once that's, accomplished, to inculcate that slowly as they get confident and get the skill, not just, start with high masses or even start with singing 4 songs at mass, but let's just get one really well. Even if you just do one song at the end of mass, get the kids to learn and get used to that without it being too much. So, it's kind of a balance. I want to guide and I want to give those goals that the church has, the mindset the church has. But I also know that, this individual has a lot of experience, is very talented at it, especially from what I've heard from others. So, give them room to work, but also I want to try to guide them into what the ideal of the church is.
Right. And that ideal, part of that ideal of the church, and I can read it right now. I've got this highlighted from Pope Pius XII. It says, and this is almost the very end of his encyclical, it should hardly be necessary to add the warning that when the means and talent available are unequal to the task, it is better to forego such attempts than to do something which would be unworthy of divine worship and sacred gathering. So I think almost really exactly what you said, Father, that you need to make sure that it's worthy of it rather than just throwing something up there because you need a choir. I think that's right. That's definitely the case. And I think that's a really good question. So I think we don't want this to go too long. And so I want to end by asking a few tips for choir directors and a few tips for singers from each of you. And I think, Father, I would start with you, and because you just brought it up, really. So I think there are hopefully people listening to this in choir in parishes around the world that are maybe interested in a choir or have very small choirs. Give me really specific details of how should they begin in terms of literally like what mass? What would you recommend? Okay, they're all fresh and new. What should they just start out with to try to get decent at?
Well, I mean, most of our parishes, they know Mass of Our Lady, Mass of the Angels is something that they've heard, or Mass 11. I think the most important thing is for a new choir or for a choir that doesn't have a lot of experience is just, to start small and work your way up. Don't try to do harmonies until you've really mastered, the single part music, or chant or whatever. Try it's better to do a few things well than to do a lot of things poorly. So start with some simple masses that you're going to really, really do well, and don't underestimate, the beauty of Gregorian chant. And also, I would say the difficulty of Gregorian chant. I can't say how many times there have been choirs I've been with, or choirs that I've heard that, they might sing a four-part song really well, but they can't sing the propers at a high mass. And that I think that's a complete backwards priority. The priority is supposed to be on Gregorian chant. Priority is supposed to be on liturgical music strictly, and that's what Gregorian chant is. So it's very beautiful. It's very uplifting. It's very conducive to prayer. It's not as fancy as polyphonic music or four-part songs, but there's a great beauty and complexity to it that a lot of people miss. That's I guess, just answering your question, I would really encourage people to start small, do a little bit well, and then build off of that as you have time and as you have the opportunity. But that's hard. It takes a lot of patience and a lot of time, but it's definitely the mindset we should try to have, I think.
Yeah, and as you say, Father, I mean, when you read through these encyclicals, they're very clear. Both of the popes are very clear about it being primarily, first of all, Gregorian, and then polyphonic. And so that's exactly as you said. I mean, that you're so right, and I've experienced the same thing, and I'm sure Dominic has too. That even good choirs, anyone listening to this should go, especially choir directors, go and say, okay, let's pull out our Gregorian again, and let's get really, really good at this, and let's truly, because I don't know if I've been a part of many choirs, and I've been a part of very good choirs, but very few of them could actually sing Gregorian properly. I can't. Yeah. I honestly can't, and I would love to be able to. And I think that's so important, as you say, Father. It's such a beautiful, almost in my mind, almost divinely inspired form of music.
Right. And Dominic, I'm just going to jump in and direct this at you. You remember, when we had some time that we were really working on Gregorian chant a lot. It took a lot of time and it was monotonous. But those are some of the most beautiful masses I've ever sung with. They weren't as awe-inspiring or impressive as some of those masses by Palestrina that we did, which are amazing. I love Palestrina. I love polyphonic music. But some of the most prayerful and inspiring masses that I've ever sung were just simple Gregorian masses that were done really well. Do you agree?
Oh, that was exactly the word I was going to use. I say prayerful is exactly correct. I think you can get so caught up in your harmonies and your different melodies in your big Palestrina type masses, but for the Gregorian, your melody is so it's together with the words, and it's together with the prayer. So it's so much easier to pray your song when it's Gregorian than the polyphonic.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, that takes time, and there's definitely technique to it, but there's also the a large part of that is the working with the group that you have to be able to sing it in unison. When you're doing polyphonic music, you're trying to blend together. You're singing your own part, and then you're blending. With Gregorian chant, you're all singing the exact same thing, and the difficulty is being so completely in sync that it's like one voice. And that's where that unity, the beauty really comes out, is when you have that huge group of people, or small group, whatever. You have a group of people singing one part, and it just joins together so beautifully, so perfectly. It's really incredible, and you won't understand until you work on it and get to that point. But it's incredible. It's really amazing. And there's definitely some tricks to it, but and technique to it, but it's really, really worth the effort.
And it's really interesting.
I agree.
Go ahead.
Just a real quick addition to that, I would definitely encourage anyone and everyone choir directors or choir members to learn to read the Gregorian notation.
Yes,
because it's so much easier to sing Gregorian music with Gregorian notation, and there's a very much it's easier to feel the melody or to sing proper Gregorian when you're actually reading how it was written.
Right, the rhythm and the flow of the music is actually in the notation. It is,
yeah. And you can see it on the paper, and it translates to it immediately, as opposed to the chopping it out with your quarter notes and your 8 notes. It's more like a piece of art than it is
But see, that's a great point. So that's a great tip, and I think that people maybe don't understand that. Maybe that's why they don't know exactly that's how they can help themselves be a better choir and singing Gregorian. Maybe they just need to pull out their libras, which maybe it's a little harder to find, but that's a really good tip. I think that's something that people can maybe start doing and go and really go brush up on the Gregorian, try to get that really good. And I just had to add to that because I watched an interview one time with this guy who sang in the choir, and they sang the Miserere Mei Deus by Allegri, which I'm sure everyone's heard. It's this really incredibly beautiful song that's kind of half Gregorian and half of this extremely difficult polyphonic high notes and all of this stuff going up and down. And this guy says they asked him, like, so is this very hard singing these notes and stuff? And he's like, it began. I don't remember the exact phrase, but the guy was asking him about the polyphonic part, which is kind of the famous high notes and whatnot. And the guy's like, no, the hardest part is being together on the Gregorian chant.
Yeah. Right. And I think it helps to listen to Gregorian chant. I just wanted to throw this in there before I forgot. Personally, my favorite is listening to the Benedictine monks of Santo Domingo de Silos. Personally, I find them my favorite, and I think they really bring out the rhythm of Gregorian chant. I mean, a lot of people really like the monks of Salem. Personally, that's not my favorite, but the monks of Santo Domingo de Silos, that I think that helps a lot to get an understanding of what Gregorian chant should sound like. So I just want to throw that in there before I forgot.
No, perfect. Thanks, Father. And Dominic, I guess I would go ahead.
That's a really good point, though, Father. That there are different schools of thought when it comes to Gregorian, and none of them are necessarily wrong, and none of them are necessarily right. And it totally depends on your choir. And there's obviously you don't sing Gregorian like an opera. That doesn't work at all. But there is definitely different schools of thought because I tend to prefer the Salem school of thought, but totally personal preference. But yeah, I think for each choir, I would encourage to find what you like as a choir and try to recreate something that you can already hear. So look up the monks of Santo Domingo, listen to a song, and they're like, all right, we're going to try to sing this song just like they sing it. Do the same rhythm, same notes, etc. Or do the Salem. And I think that's a really good teaching, in a choir practice. You listen to something and it's like, all right, let's recreate that.
Yes. Sure.
And I think you can do that too for polyphonic, right? I'm sure that, if you go
Absolutely.
And listen to, say Sicut Cervus is one that most everyone can sing from Palestrina, not everyone, but that's the one everyone aspires to because it's one of the most beautiful ever written. And it's really interesting that if you sing that and then you go and listen to it, it's like, wow, we were about 2 notes too slow, or we were 2 beats too slow. We were. That's another tip just from my side. Choirs, in my experience, are almost always too slow.
Yeah.
It kind of I'd say it totally depends. Usually, I would say too slow. Depends on the type of music, but sometimes then it's so fast that there's no, you can't get a breath, or you feel rushed. You feel rushed as you're praying the mass or whatever. So there's a lot of preference and personal opinion in that, but different schools of thought on that as well.
Yeah, sure.
Guess,
Right. And exactly. It's hard to generalize. Yeah. It's hard to generalize. Go ahead.
Here's a question for you, Father. So would you recommend to choir directors to get with the priests that they are under and figure out what their preference of music is? Because like if I was going to say, go to a priest and say, do you prefer Gregorian like this or do you prefer it like that? And Father says, no, I want it done this way because this is the way that it is easier for me to, be prayerful during Mass. What would you say to that thought?
I think it's a great thought. Especially, personally, I'm very picky when it comes to music. After singing so many years with you guys, I'm pretty picky. Yeah, you bet. Especially all the recordings that we did, going through all that music and editing it and whatnot. Certain things really irritate me when it comes to music. And I've gotten better at it. But there's certain things when I'm having Mass or some liturgical function, and if the choir sings it this way, it aggravates me. It drives me crazy, and it gets my mind on what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I might love the people to death that are in that choir, and I might love their effort and all of that, but it just sets my nerves on edge. So that's me personally, and it's something I have to work on, and I'm definitely getting better at. But I would say that would be fantastic if the choir director and the choir is trying to help out the priest. I think that's what they would want to do. Because the priest is taking the place of Christ there, and it's a pretty serious role, and it really helps us out when we're not fighting distractions from the choir or fighting personal pet peeves that, okay, maybe that's a little too personal and I'm a little too bigoted there, but I think that would be fantastic if they have that mindset. That would be great.
Yeah. So have open discourse with the priest and always have deference to what the priest has to say. So as a choir director,
that's great.
You get.
I'm not paying
very
these guys
easy.
to say this, by the way. Sorry, I'm not paying anybody to say this. Sorry, okay. Not very much.
My Venmo account is. No, but I think that's absolutely important that choir directors don't think that they are that important. They're important to a degree, but they always answer to the priest. Or always answer to the liturgy.
Choir members, this is something that this is a pet peeve of mine, especially lately, is this whole modernist idea of the importance of the lay people. Now, again, everyone's prayers, of course, are a part of the Mass, and they're joined with the priest, and they are joined with the universal church. So that, I don't mean to take anything away from that. But the actual participation, that how people have to be involved, that's something that absolutely has changed unbelievably, obviously, with the Novus Ordo, that everyone has, they're literally passing out quote unquote communion and whatnot. So they feel like this modernist idea since the late 1950s, everyone needs to be more involved in it, and every individual needs to feel involved, which is total rubbish. We know that the individual and their feelings don't matter in terms of the Mass. The sacrifice of the Mass is an action of God. It is God giving to us and through the priest actions on the altar. And that's something that I think we need to take a lot more seriously and take ourselves a lot less seriously, as Dominic said.
Yeah. Well, as you said, it's very modernist, and also it's, Protestant too. But, we're going to glorify God more by kneeling humbly in our pews and praying than we are by making a lot of noise and causing distractions or, getting our own way at the expense of others. That's not the point of church. That's definitely not the point of Mass. It's supposed to be focused on God, and you throw in too much of that human element and that, idea of, like you said, the laity trying to do too much or wanting to be too involved. I mean, they need to be involved, but they're supposed to be joining in prayer and offering with the priests, not in a bunch of external things. I mean, if we could see what was going on spiritually, I think we would be wanting to stay in our pews and just watch it quietly. rather than doing something external. If we could see what was going on with our own physical eyes, every one of us would be just spellbound in our pews, just wanting to watch it over and over again. But obviously that's we can't see that, and we're trying to participate and add to the beauty of the Mass, etc. But it's a good point you brought up. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think another thing to add to that too is that if you have been in choir for a long time and you always every Sunday up in the choir loft singing, it's a very good thing to take a break every once in a while. Just take a Sunday, take 2 Sundays, and focus on the Mass and kind of recenter yourself. Of okay, I'm not coming to Mass on Sunday to sing. I'm coming to glorify God and to pray. And be part of the liturgy. But yeah, it's important to step back every once in a while.
Sure, that's a good point.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a very good point. And I think that's. I guess I'd ask each of you to end. What's your tips for someone? Do I want to go with someone who sings? I'd say someone who might be vaguely interested in joining their choir, but they just won't quite go for it. And Father, what's your advice for them? Why would you encourage them to or not to join the choir?
Well, on one hand, don't bury the talent that God has given to you. If you do have some talent, use it for the greater glory of God. I mean, that's why God gave it to you. But there's a lot of fear or self-doubt or whatever that can get in the way of that. But you definitely won't regret it if you put the effort into it. So on that score, I definitely encourage people that want to sing, that want to develop it. If there are some people in the parish or choir that can work with you or help you learn the basics, great. If not, on the internet, there's a lot of instructions, vocal coaches and whatnot that you can learn quite a bit. I'm still learning a lot myself when I do watch those kind of things or listen to those things. So on the one hand, definitely encourage it. It's worth the effort. Definitely. It helps us. We get a lot of graces from it, and also helps us to, I think personally, I've gotten so much out of singing at Mass. I think all of us, the three of us, have definitely talked about it with Father Philip, just how much singing has helped us spiritually. Immense blessings and graces from that. So it's huge. It's huge. And also to be able to help uplift people. They come to church, and if there's beautiful music, it's like it transports you out of this world. And it's very uplifting. It's very, it's just very beautiful and encouraging. And we can add, if you have the ability to sing and can join in and help out with that, it's awesome. It just really helps the priests. It really helps the people. And it gives us a little taste of heaven. I can't encourage it enough.
Awesome, Father. Dominic, you have anything to add?
Yeah, a little hard to follow up on that one. Sorry, you should have given it to me first.
Well, no. The thing is, we've all talked about this amongst ourselves. I think the three of us, and we all have the same viewpoint on it. So
I can add a little bit. I'd say having a layperson's perspective, that it is amazing to be able to be part of the liturgy. So if you're able to have a high Mass and you are literally singing, praying the words out loud, the same words that the priest is praying, I think that is just incredibly special. And a lot of people, I think, just straight up overlook that. But I think it's really important to know what you're singing. And if you're you've been going to Mass forever and you're very well versed with the Latin translations of the Credo and the Gloria and the Kyrie, and you're able to get up there and sing, and not just sing, notes, but you're actually singing the words, and you're singing the liturgy. It's an amazing thing. And it is an incredible gift that God has allowed us to, partake in the most amazing, miracle sacrament ever. It's incredible as a layperson to be able to be part of that.
Yeah.
And singing is praying twice. So that's my that's my big one. Like, all right, I get twice the grace.
Yeah. No, wait. There's a caveat on that, though. There's a caveat that they don't say. Singing is praying twice when you go to choir practice also.
Right. If you show up at the last minute, it's like minus half the graces.
No, for sure. The choir directors out there listening absolutely understand what I'm talking about. And no question. Oh man,
we could talk for another hour on that.
No, we could.
Yes.
No, I really appreciate it. I mean, I think I guess we could talk. I wanted to get one tip from each of you for choir directors. If you don't have one, that's fine. But I guess, Father, I'll go with you. You can pass if you want. If you have one, it can be literally the style and how they do it. I mean, just what's one tip you would give to someone who's a choir director?
Let's hear Dominic first.
Go ahead, Dominic.
Yay. Thanks. I think my tip would be kind of following off of what we were just talking about is know the words you're directing. That's extremely important. And be more mindful of the feeling and the feeling of the music more so than the timing. So it is important to have proper timing and to, beat out the notes as they should be. But it is more important that a director is directing the song or directing the music rather than the notes, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah.
So you're telling a story, or you're helping the story be told. That is the song that you're singing. And if you're just standing there beating your arms up and down like a metronome, you're not telling a story. You're opening a book and be like, all right, read it yourself, sort of thing. So I think that would be my tip for,
well
directors.
Good point.
Well said.
Yeah. Certainly.
Father, you got one?
I'm kind of going through a list of different ones in my head. I'm sure, Dominic, you had to do that too.
Yeah.
I mean, what you said was perfect because, being up in the choir loft at Mass isn't the time to practice.
Yes.
If your choir can't stick to the timing and if you have to beat out every note and really be so on every single note, then you haven't done your job as a choir to practice and be ready for Mass. So yeah, excellent point. The director during Mass should be keeping everybody together and bringing out parts and working on their dynamics, keeping everybody unified, but it's not the time to teach, how to sing or to make sure that somebody doesn't miss that part. That can be a disaster. Having directed a lot, I would say first, personally, don't lose sight of you have to pray too. The singing is praying, but your mind has to be more on God and why you're doing what you're doing, rather than on just not letting there be a train wreck or whatever. That's a very difficult thing to do. It's so hard to pray when you're directing, but your actions can be the prayer, yes, but also you need to join your mind and your heart into what you're doing, so it's not just about the music. It's not just about the good sound. It's about prayer. That's huge. Not getting discouraged as a choir director is huge because you can work and put so much time into something and it flops or it doesn't turn out the way you want. I mean, for me, that's something I really struggled with when I was directing. We put a lot of time into something that sounded awful and I just wanted to give up. And then people come after and say, "Oh, that was so amazing." Oh, okay. So yeah, it takes a lot of work for choir directors and a lot of attention to detail and whatnot, but it's so worth it. And I could definitely go on and on and on about that, but I think the one point that I'd just like to say is just reiterate that, that make it a prayer. Keep your mind on what's most important. That's glorifying God, not on how technical everything is. And whether everything's perfect. I mean, that needs to be there, and you got to do your job of making sure it's not a distraction. And if there are people that are lacking in the talent or ability or not there yet, got to take care of that. But definitely remember your job to pray and join with the Mass. And if you can't balance both of those, then, well, probably should weigh whether you should be directing, because that's the first priority and role. Okay, I'm going on and on. Sorry.
No. It's a great answer, Father. All right, I want to wrap up one last question, and you can keep this brief. Each of you, what is the most inspiring moment you've had singing or directing choir? Or if you don't have one, what's your favorite song to direct?
Go ahead, Dominic.
Oh, that's an easy one for me. Easy one. So probably 9 years ago or so, there was I think it was an ordination. And so all the priests were there, and they sang the Solemn Salve Regina afterwards. And it was just only the seminarians and priests sang it. So for whatever reason, the sisters weren't singing along with it. And it was amazing. And it was like the most uplifting, just heartfelt, manly, godly thing I have ever heard. And that still sticks with me to this day. That was early on when I'm barely singing at that point. Mm-hmm. It kind of sticks with me as being like one of the fulcrum points of, oh my goodness, I love music. This is amazing.
Same. It was the same exact experience. I mean, I think the same song, same moment.
Yeah.
I was there.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah.
Oh no! My favorite song to direct, Secret Cherubs.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Good answer.
That's a good one.
Don't even need the music anymore.
All right. Dominic, right. Have you learned Si Tibi d'Anima Mea? Because I love that.
I see CTV to me is kind of a Palestrina sound. It doesn't have much.
I like it.
I
like some melody. Recordings of it.
Some recordings. It's kind of just meh, in my opinion. Doesn't have a whole lot of melody. It's just polyphony. But sorry, I digress. Go ahead, Father. Let's go to you, Father.
Oh gosh, I don't know where to start because there's so many. I would say a lot of times as a men's choir, when we all got together after a number of years, we got back together and it was like we're really in sync, and because when you sing together for so long, you know what the other guys are thinking. There are a lot of times when we got together and sang that just really stick out in my mind. A lot of times directing with Father Philip playing the organ, absolutely love that because again, Father Philip was part of we were all part of that choir and we just are on the same wavelength. I could twitch my finger and Father Philip would adjust. He's amazing organist, and directing with him at the organ is fantastic. Sister Ioana too in Omaha. Definitely remember my first Solemn High Mass. Because it was, all my friends, you guys, and the sisters, and then joined with, my sisters, my family members that we've sung together since I grew up with the choir. My mom's a choir director. My sister plays the organ. Two of them do. So getting kind of like, for me, it was like the old world and the new world together was incredible. Father Philip's first Mass was probably one of my favorites. I gotta say. His first Solemn High Mass, that was awesome. Singing Palestrina's Missa Brevis.
Yep. That's the first time you ever really sang that, I think, in our immediate CMRI group. I think that was the first time we'd done it at a big function.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
And I think I said earlier that we always played the recording for Father Geckle's Mass, but it was Father Philip's Mass.
Yes.
That Missa Brevis.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's so well done and very well directed. I mean, that was an incredible experience. But as you guys say, it's pretty incredible that we had people who came together and practiced like for 15 minutes before the Mass once, and this is people from all over the U.S. And talk about Dominic's riff-raff, and this riff-raff all comes together and joins the sisters in the choir loft, and it ends up being this absolutely masterpiece of a mass and recording it. They talk about sometimes the Holy Ghost I think is just there, and Saint Cecilia or whoever else is up there with us, because that was incredible.
Well, a lot of people put in a lot of work. The people that came from all the different states and whatever, they were working on their own. That's true. Can't minimize that, but yes, definitely, it definitely came together so well, and I think the angels were definitely helping us out with that one.
And that can actually you can actually listen to that on this channel. That's I think the first video I ever posted on this channel. The entire mass. It's definitely worth listening to. You can also buy that. I'll try to attach the link where you can buy that CD from the Mater Dei seminary link, I think, for the choir. But plenty of other beautiful CDs. The seminary choir really had its heyday back, I don't know now, 7-8 years ago, and it had some very, very nice CDs. I highly recommend all of them. I mean, the Lenten CD is really, truly touching and beautiful, and the men's choir, as you both said before, it to me, and the women too, like when the nuns, the sisters sing together too, I think it also has moments of true, as close to heaven as we can feel almost on this earth. And I mean, highly recommend all of them. Okay, I guess before we go, I mean, any last words? We've gone about double as long as I expected. But
Oh, I have a little spoiler. We are planning in Omaha to record another men's CD here in the next couple months. So I don't know. We're gonna start working on getting that together. So just a heads up. We might have another one out in the next bit.
I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to plan a missionary trip up to Omaha now.
Yeah, right.
Oh man,
I'm gonna have to come back and visit.
Yeah, no, I could talk about this all day. Thanks. It's been really nice. Really nice talking about this.
Yeah, thank you both. I have no idea who stayed around to listen for the whole thing. Probably Father Geckle's sisters and mother. Maybe my mom, Dominic's mom. Maybe she listened to. But anyway, for anyone who stuck by, we had a good time. We had a good time reminiscing, and I do hope that there were little nuggets of information that I think you both had some really, really fantastic points. Obviously, we had some great points from two great popes. You go check those out. I'll attach the links to those encyclicals, which are very, very nice and worth reading for anyone who is in the choir or is a choir director. Father Geckle, Dominic, thank you so much for coming on. We'll have to do it again sometime. We'll have part 2 where we'll just sit back and drink a coffee and reminisce about old days.
Sounds great.
But until then, God bless. And I guess good luck to your parish choirs.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
You've been listening to the Catholic Family Podcast. If you enjoyed this show, please share it with your friends and family. You can support the production on Patreon and PayPal, and you can reach Kevin at kevin89davis@gmail.com. Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam. All for the greater glory of God.